Hello, I'm Angelique Prince, Director of Prevention Programs and Services at WorkSafe BC. I'm speaking to BC employers throughout this video. However, BC workers, first aid training providers, first aid attendants, and Joint Health and Safety Committee members will also find this information helpful. Employers need to review and update their first aid assessment every 12 months or whenever a significant change affecting the assessment occurs. Make sure to include workers in the review and any updates. Significant changes in operations that would require you to review and update the first aid assessment include changes in the maximum number of workers at the workplace, changes to how accessible or remote the workplace is, changes to the nature and extent of risks and hazards in the workplace caused by new or different equipment, processes, tasks, or workplace conditions, changes to the hazard rating assigned to your classification unit, and finally, changes to barriers or routes that may affect first aid or BC EHS response or travel time. Be sure to document the date of the first aid assessment review and who was involved in the review process. If changes are required following the review, complete a new assessment document in consultation with your workers. In addition to a written first aid assessment, you must also have written first aid procedures for your workplace. You must conduct annual drills of these procedures. First aid drills allow you and your workers to test the effectiveness of first aid procedures. Through drills, everyone gains a deeper understanding of their role and responsibilities. This promotes a swift and effective response in the event of a real emergency. Drills also provide an opportunity to identify and resolve potential challenges or shortcomings in the written first aid procedures. If there are multiple work locations where procedures are substantially the same, one drill is sufficient. But if procedures differ, then drills are required at each location. Procedures and processes that should be assessed during first aid drills include the following. 1. The ability to access equipment, supplies, and first aid facilities. 2. Workers' familiarity with how to call for first aid and the location of first aid equipment. 3. How effectively the first aid attendant can be summoned. 4. How effectively the first aid attendant can respond to both minor and serious injuries. 5. How effectively an injured worker can be accessed and if there are any barriers in the workplace. 6. How effectively an injured worker can be prepared and transported to an area accessible to BCAHS if required. And 7. Whether first aid attendants are familiar with documentation and reporting requirements. A first aid drill should include mock scenarios that support the evaluation of the procedures. If the workplace requires first aid equipment and procedures that exceed the minimum requirements of Schedule 3A, those should be incorporated into the annual drill. Activating a workplace emergency response plan, including first aid, in response to an actual incident is not considered a drill. You're still required to hold a formal drill. The results of the drill and any subsequent changes to first aid procedures should be shared with all first aid attendants, as well as with the Joint Health and Safety Committee or worker representative as applicable. Find more information at worksafebc.com/first aid.